Call to order for our Board of Supervisors meeting Monday, March 4th, 2019. Great to see all of you out there. So let's begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And the first item is to approve the March 4th, 2019 board agenda. Do we have any additions or deletions from the agenda? Okay. All those in favor, or do we have a motion to approve the agenda? Somebody make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the March 4th, 2019 board agenda.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor to approve the March 4th, 2019 board agenda, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Okay, motion carries. We have an executive session on February 19th to discuss matters of litigation. So that was just what we did on February 19th. So approval of the bill list. Has everybody had a chance to check over the bill list? Any questions? Okay, no questions. Do I have a motion to approve it?
I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion to approve the bill list from February 15th through February 28th in the amount of $141,178.81.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to approve the bill list from February 15th, 2019 through February 28th, 2019 in the amount of $141,178.81. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Bill carries. And on approval of the minutes, has everybody had a chance to check out the minutes? Any questions, corrections? All right, do I have a motion to approve the meeting minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the meeting minutes of the board's February 19th, 2019 regular meeting.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the meeting minutes of the board's February 19th, 2019 regular meeting. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. There's a fair amount of feedback, guys, if there's a way of reducing that. Okay, public comment. This is open to any of the public who want to talk about anything either on or off the agenda. Thank you. Come on up. State your name and your address.
Lisa Mossy, 311 Montgomery Avenue, Oaks. It's come to my attention that this board has approved an additional 26 meetings during the course of the year. I have not found any agendas for these meetings. I have not found any minutes for these meetings. They are not posted online anywhere. This is not transparent government. How do we know what's being discussed at these meetings? As a member of the public, these meetings are taking place at 3 o'clock in the afternoon when most people are at work. How do we know what's being discussed at these meetings? I don't think it's transparent government. It should stop. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? We don't have a public hearing to report on. Moving on to old business, consider adoption of ordinance 573, amending Chapter 169 of the Township Code to prohibit parking along a section of Norwood Street and 2nd Avenue. I believe we've discussed this before. Any other questions, comments? Do I have a motion regarding that?
I'll make a motion to enact ordinance 573 prohibiting parking along a portion of Norwood Street at 2nd Avenue.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second to enact ordinance 573 prohibiting parking along a portion of Norwood Street at 2nd Avenue. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. And item number 4, consider adoption of ordinance 574, amending Chapter 122 of the Township Code, repealing the prohibition of fireworks. We've discussed this. As I understand it, this is to bring the Township Code in alignment with state law. Are there any other questions, comments? All right, do I have a motion?
I'll move to make a motion to enact ordinance 574, repealing the prohibition on fireworks in the Township Code.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second to enact ordinance 574, repealing the prohibition on fireworks in the Township Code. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Okay, number 5, consider adoption of Resolution 2019-18, approving the final subdivision plan for the property at Old State and Hafner Roads. Do we have any discussion, questions? All right.
Good evening. I'm Tom Smith from Bursick and Smith Engineering. With me tonight are Mr. Clinton Starkey, who is the property owner of the subject property, approximately 3 acres on Hafner Road and Old State Road, and Mr. Tom Himes, who is representing the developer who is going to be building one of the lots. We've been talking with the solicitor and engineer about fees for widening curb and sidewalk. The corner lot, which will be Lot 1, is where Mr. Starkey lives. He has no intentions of doing anything with that lot. And when you look at the frontage on Hafner Road and add it to the frontage on Old State Road of that lot, it's more frontage than involved with the development of the two building lots, Lot 2 and 3. We asked for waivers of road widening, curb and sidewalk for the entire project. And especially there's a hardship created on Lot 1 because, as you can see on the right-of-way plan there, the right-of-way actually jogs around the front of the house. Mr. Starkey made some measurements, and from the center of the road to the steps that come up to the front of the house is 15 feet. About half of that is the existing roadway, about 8 feet. So those steps are 7 feet off the edge of the road, and the Planning Commission recommended at their meeting that they would like to see curb and sidewalk extended along Hafner Road out to Old State Road. None of those improvements were recommended by the township planner, township engineer, and so forth, and we really feel that we would like to leave lot number 1 alone and not have any improvements with it. The township has asked for significant stormwater improvements for the 2 lots on Old State Road, which will total somewhere on the order of about $23,000 to take care of township drainage. In addition, we have to put in our own stormwater management for the 2 lots that we'll be building on. The Himes want to build on Lot 2, which is the middle area there between the corner lot, and Mr. Starkey is going to retain lot number 3 to be sold at some time in the future, but there are no immediate plans to do anything with lot 3. So really our goal here is to create the one new building lot essentially, and the other one will be held in reserve. I spoke to your solicitor this morning. I understand that there's a resolution prepared with a blank line for possible fee in lieu of. You know, for us, we believe that it's a hardship due to the fact that we're going to be doing $23,000 of stormwater improvements along there. And we would like to ask, since there is sufficient right-of-way, we would like to ask the board to consider waiving the curb sidewalk road widening and not require any fees for that work.
There's a net cost to you. I think the memo that Bill sent to us that showed that it was $17,000 after accounting for the stormwater. The total cost
Yes.
after giving a credit for the stormwater work.
That's correct.
So to avoid counting that twice, I guess the question would be whether there's a portion of the remaining 17 that you would be willing to contribute towards a grant of waivers, although first we would have to determine whether a majority of the board is in favor of the waivers.
Right.
But then assuming that they were, would some portion of the 17 be agreeable to the applicant?
I guess our point was if you take Lot 1 out of the picture, that offsets the 23,000 that we'll be doing, and there would be no fee if you look at it that way, since nothing is happening at all with that. If you consider we would have to do widening curb and sidewalk along the whole frontage of Lot 1 on the two streets, then with the storm sewer work we would be doing would generate a difference of 17,000. So if Lot 1 was completely out of the picture, it would be a credit to us rather than a fee.
And you're asking that it be completely out of the picture, but not
Yes.
asking for a credit?
Right.
Because I don't think a credit's going to work. I'm just going to go out on a limb and guess that a credit's not really going to work.
You can always ask.
Sure.
You know, this property was, as it is now, it was part of the original tract of that development that was built back then. The right-of-way was set aside for that on both roads, and that's the way the lot sits today. That lot was, this entire 3-acre lot basically was not part of that subdivision that Sukonic did. So there were no required improvements at that time. And, you know, we think it would be a hardship. We would be removing a lot of trees and embankment along Hafner Road. We would ask that no improvements be needed on Hafner Road, as recommended by the Planning Commission.
I just want to make sure I understand. There was a letter submitted requesting a series of waivers.
Yes.
And the resolution draft shows a grant of all of those waivers.
Okay.
In exchange for some amount.
Okay.
So are you to that point, is that what you're asking for? A grant of those waivers?
Yes. we are.
Not something beyond what was asked
No.
for before?
No,
Okay,
not anymore.
all right.
I think what changed was at the Planning Commission, the planners said they would like to see curb and sidewalk going out to Old State Road. And to do that, we would be the back of sidewalk up against the curb. We would have 3 feet of lawn before the steps to the house. That'd be a pretty severe impact.
On the staff and consultant level, nobody really had a problem with the waiver requests, assuming that we could come to an agreement, on the
Right.
number, but ultimately it's up to the board to decide how they feel about the waivers.
understand.
So I would say to the board, we drafted them assuming that the waivers were okay, but that we're always just assuming with a small a, because we haven't had a dialogue with you about it, so we don't know how you feel until we're here.
What about recreation fees, $4,000 per lot? Has that been considered a part of it?
Does that, I don't recall whether that applies to
They don't all.
a project this size. We had not talked about it, because there's no required open space that it's in consideration of. Jeff, do you have something on that?
I think the way the ordinance is written, it's $4,000 per new housing unit. It doesn't take into consideration anything beyond if it's a new housing unit or not, and assuming here there would be 2 in a
But-
house. When they brought in a building permit, which is the typical time we collect that fee, it would be that, the sewer tapping fees and all of those are usually collected at the same.
But since this is just a subdivision, it wouldn't be a part of this resolution ordinarily then?
No, it's not normally part of any resolution, it's just
Yeah.
applied at the business, or at the building permit fee. a building permit application.
We have done a couple really large ones where we've made an estimation that it'll be applicable later, but it's not due as a part of the approval resolution.
Right,
Yeah.
right. We have, and that's in negotiations with
Yeah.
larger developments.
Yep, yep. Well, that's a whole separate thing. That's money that's dedicated in lieu of providing any, recreation space.
Mr. Starkey should sort of elaborate a little bit on his plan.
Good evening.
Hello.
I'm Clint Starkey, 296 Hafner Road. Just want to make mention, our family's been paying taxes on that property for 100 years. My grandfather moved there in 1918. And the only reason that we're doing this development, my better half is diabetic. She's got pulmonary fibrosis. She broke her hip in May last year. So with that, we wanted to build a house on this lot, one floor or whatever is appropriate, so she doesn't have to go up and down steps. That's the only reason we're doing this. And I have no intent of doing anything with Lot 1 at all. As far as open space goes, I was concerned the property across the street, I would imagine soon will be developed. Trespassing signs were put up all along Old State Road on that property about a month ago. And I think that was probably due to, in case somebody gets hurt and files a lawsuit. Since those signs have been put up, the people are still riding their horses on the property. People are walking their dogs on the property, so forth. I'm looking at a financial burden here on this waiver, and I'm looking to you at the township, supposed to help with people as best you can. If there's any questions you have for me, I'll be glad to answer them. I worked for 41 years at Container Corporation down the road from Mr. John Hughes's place. I've been using that Black Rock Road for quite a long time. Now, there are no other sidewalks on Old State Road that I can see. And I put my name in here last month to be asked to be sent a letter on the sewer that's coming down Old State Road concerning the other people. I put my name in, my email number. I never got a letter. Ruth and John and Ruth Glover, they received a letter and were telling me about it. That was on the 28th. I did not at that time come out here because I wasn't invited. So with that intact, if there's any questions I can answer for you, I'd be willing to answer them.
Do you want to find out more information about the sewer? Because we can set something up for you individually if you want that information. I'm
Well-
sorry you didn't get your letter. I'm not sure what happened there.
Yeah. Well, I would imagine John and Ruth Ann would probably share that information with me. But I didn't want to come out here because I was not invited.
Mr. Starkey, we only invited folks whose properties would be served by that sewer main extension. I have a 10-slide PowerPoint presentation I prepared, answered most of their questions. I'd be happy to print a copy for you.
Okay, along with that, I do have a layout of the homes down, the ones that already have the sewer. Okay? And I understand if their sewer fails, they must hook up to the sewer, or if they sell their property.
Yeah, I don't want to get into the whole discussion here,
That's
but
another ballgame.
I'll be glad to discuss it with you offline.
Thank you, sir. Anything else?
Are we under a time constraint here? We have,
Jeff, were we on the?
I think their clock runs out in April. I can dig through the file. If you give me a minute, I'll take a look and check back in.
my reason for asking is, do you want to table this item for this evening? And maybe we can address some of Mr. Starkey's concerns and come back with a better answer for you.
Yes, I don't want to belabor anything here tonight.
Not a problem.
Yeah, thank you for telling us the backstory. It's helpful.
And I
Thank
just
you.
want to clarify that, as it was stated earlier, that because of the sewer expense, your 23,000 for stormwater expense, that you're looking to have these waivers approved at no fee. Is that correct?
I think that's fair, because otherwise, if we pay a fee of the 17,000, we're paying for 100% of what we would not do. The waiver is not in most places that I work with, if you're granted a waiver from a certain requirement, you don't pay the equivalent fee to install it.
And that's
You're
why,
granted a waiver.
that's why I had asked if you were agreeable to some portion. That's why I asked if 17 was the grand total
Right.
to work from, and whether you'd be willing to pay some portion of that.
And that would be 100% of what everything was.
Right, right.
Yeah.
So,
And since there has been no number discussed other than the calculation that I did, but we were asking for consideration if Lot 1 was taken out of the picture, there would be no fee completely. So at somewhere between 0 and 1,700, or 17,000, I guess, is an appropriate.
at a staff level, well, break it down into two parts. One is whether a majority of the board is comfortable with the waivers conceptually, and whether you have any objections to granting them. Assuming that you don't, then in terms of the fee, at a staff level, Mr. Dingman and I had discussed $10,000 this afternoon, but we've never said that to you guys, so we're telling you now that okay. So we have until April 4, but if you're comfortable, I guess I'll ask you first whether you would be comfortable with that number, and then ask the board whether they would also. What we're trying to do, that comes out, to $5,000 on each of the new lots. It ignores the third. And although I understand your personal story and take it to heart, we also have to try to be as equal as we can with respect to other applications that we've processed. So that's what I was proposing at a staff level for you guys to consider tonight. And I guess your options would be, A, decide if a majority of you are okay with the waivers. B, if you are you okay with that number? Or C, if you're not comfortable and want to pull back, you have until April 4th to make a decision under the current time extension.
I think that would be acceptable. I think that's reasonable. The only thing that I did say that I'd want to emphasize, that we're going to do one building lot at this point. So we would ask that be somehow tied into a building permit for Lot 3 for the second part of that.
So, okay, so normally in the so-called common scenario, the fee in lieu is paid prior to recording, which makes it easier for staff to not have to track it through to the permit process. The applicant is asking that if you agreed to it, that $5,000 be paid prior to recording, and then the other $5,000 not until the building permit on the other one, which is a little bit more work for either Jeff or someone within Jeff's close immediate circle, I guess. Right?
Yes, generally that's fall down to my level.
Is that okay with, Mr. Stark, is that okay with you?
Sounds fine to me.
Okay, I don't have any problem with that.
Okay, if somebody wants to,
Do we have a motion?
yeah,
Yes.
does someone want to, would the motion be, is there
Why don't, Joe, why don't you make the motion and,
Want me to, so the motion would be, well, before I do, when you said, is that okay, and you said yes, did you mean, which way did you mean it on the fee payment? The 5,000?
up front and the 5,000 after?
Okay. All right, so I guess we would be looking for one of you to make a motion that I would word as approval of the resolution as it's drafted and before you in the packet, with the only blank line on it being filled in to say $10,000, half payable prior to recording and half prior to the final building permit.
I'll make that motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second, as Mr. President stated it. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you
Well, sir,
so much.
well, you know what, hey, Brian?
You have a copy for us to sign this evening, or?
We do. Right in the part that I just said.
Okay. Sure.
Okay, moving on to item 6, consider authorizing the Moving on to item 6, consider authorizing the advertisement of bids for construction of the Lock 60 Upper Schuylkill Valley Park Trail Project. Do we have any questions, comments, discussion about this?
I have one comment I'd like to make before the board takes action. This is the Lock 60 Trail Project. It's a joint project between the township and Montgomery County. The action tonight would authorize advertisement of bids for this, for the trail project. The board should be aware of the fact that Mr. Breslin is presently working with the county solicitor's office to prepare a cost-sharing agreement. I can say at the staff level, we've mutually agreed with the county in regard to all the terms that have been discussed. There's nobody in disagreement over what would be, how that cost-sharing arrangement would go. Mostly it's 50-50. But I wanted the board to be aware that that item is hanging out there, and that we will certainly wrap that up before we bring this back to you to award the bids, hopefully on April 1st.
Okay, any further questions, discussions from anybody else on the board regarding this trail project?
And we ended up just doing the gravel. That was the conclusion.
It's correct. It's called a stabilized turf surface. None of the trail section you see highlighted in red on the exhibit will be paved.
I'll make a motion to authorize the advertisement of bids for the Lock 60 Upper Schuylkill Valley Park Trail Project.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second to authorize the advertisement of bids for the Lock 60 Upper Schuylkill Valley Park Trail Project. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Item 7, consider authorizing legal advertisement of Ordinance 575, authorizing the repurposing of 2017 capital financial proceeds to fund a portion of the costs for a new regional emergency services facility. Do we have any discussion regarding that? Questions?
Just a quick summary on that. Our bond counsel from Curtin Hefner prepared this for advertisement and consideration at our next meeting. If you recall, when we passed the $10 million line of credit back in 2017, that had a 2-year window which matures on March 20th. And that's where the monies that we have go into a long-term borrowing instrument. Based on the last audit, we have about $6.8 million of unused proceeds from that will be part of the long-term instrument. And we would be looking at authorizing this ordinance at the next meeting. This will round out the $10 million, basically this $10 million line of credit will become a 10-year bond, long-term bond obligation. Interest rate will be about 2.5%. We're going to be putting the proceeds of that $6.8 million in a Pliget interest-bearing account. As you know, interest rates have been rising, so we're watching to make sure we don't have any arbitrage penalty, but it looks like we'll be breaking even. So we'll have that money aside to do the repurposing of the emergency services facility. That's one comment that's in the ordinance. It requires the repurposing. And as you know, the debt service is already programmed into the budget. So this will be ready for action at our next meeting. Mr. Breslin, anything you want to add to that?
No, that's in Curtin and Hefner's court,
Yeah.
so I wouldn't presume to comment on their comments.
That's
And this is a revenue neutral repositioning of funds.
Pretty much,
This is,
yeah.
so there's no, we're not, we've already have the funds. We're just
Yes.
repositioning them.
This is just for advertisement. The action will be at our next meeting.
I'll make a motion to authorize the advertisement of ordinance. Off. I'll make a motion to authorize the advertisement of an ordinance repurposing 2017 capital financial proceeds to fund a portion of the costs of a new emergency services facility.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second to authorize the advertisement of an ordinance repurposing 2017 capital financial proceeds to fund a portion of the costs of a new emergency services facility. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. New business, action items, review proposed policy number 7 regarding replacement of mailboxes. Do we have any questions, discussion about this?
Madam Chair, this is our effort to try to be more policy-focused. This is a past practice that we'd like to codify into a policy document. We're trying to give the Public Works Director broad discretion in how he employs that, but we're trying to be consistent on how we replace and address mailboxes that get damaged, like, for example, storms that we just had, and particularly people who put in several $1,000 landscape structures within right-of-way. We want to try to make sure that we're all on the same page regarding how we approach these issues. And there's some other policies that Tom and I are working on, but this was kind of a low-hanging fruit that we'd like to get the board's review on. We're not looking for adoption tonight. This is just to be introduced and discussed for possible action at our next meeting.
So what's, Mr. Tieberman, it says $85. We'll reimburse up to $85 for a mailbox?
I think it's up to $85, no more than $85.
Okay, good. So somebody puts a super duper mailbox, it costs them $1,000.
No.
That's his problem.
Actually, that's minor. We've had ones more than that.
Okay,
so.
well, okay. All right.
I have a quick question. How did you come up with the $85?
That's a long-standing practice. That's because that's the way we always use it, right? The cost of a standard, if you go to Home Depot or Lowe's and you look at a standard cost of a mailbox with post is around $85. We don't necessarily, I guess, I don't know if Public Works actually installs it. Sometimes we help people install it, but generally, that's the number. I mean, the number can certainly be revisited in the future.
I only know because my mailbox was just, when they did Willowbrook Lane, they knocked ours down, and we got the cheapest.
Was this recently? Or is this-
Last year,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
maybe within the year. And we got like, we didn't get anything, we put it in ourselves, and it was like $150. It's just my own 2
really?
cents.
Okay.
So I want to make sure that we at least have the buffer for that.
Seeing no further discussion, questions, do I have a motion? Or do we need a motion for this?
There's no motion.
Don't need
This is-
it, just a discussion. And it also includes, if someone could turn off a mic, it also includes repaving streets, since I lost my mailbox to repaving. So moving on to manager and department head reports. Discuss the potential Upper Providence Veterans Memorial Project. Do we have anybody to talk about that one? Is that you, Tim?
As you know, we've been working with a working with a Boy Scout who wants to do a Veterans Memorial Project. But as we look at this project, we're finding out that the scope of this is much larger than a potential Eagle Scout project. I'm still working with the local scout to see if there's elements of this that he could who could work with us on. We think this may involve several other Eagle Scout projects, but I think there's a larger policy issue that I'd like the board to discuss, and that is we really do not have a Veterans Memorial statue anywhere in the township, unlike our neighboring Lower Providence. And so I would like to get the board's feel. We don't have anything currently in our capital budget for this. I think we certainly have unprogrammed funds in our open space that could be used for a structure like this. Now that we have our new building in place, whether we might want to introduce something on the grounds of Black Rock Park or elsewhere. I have some pictures of some types of memorial monuments from other towns, just to give everybody kind of a feel. They can range anywhere from $10,000 to well over $200,000. This is some that have been taken locally. This one in particular, you have memorials where you can basically have a standalone memorial where you do annual commemoration ceremonies. You also have other memorials such as this. Gets a little bit more detail where you can find local veterans from the township who have served and on an annual basis try to have them sketched into the wall. That's a little bit more involved because it takes some research to find out who are some of the local veterans, which wars they fought. And some of the issues that I just want to raise to the board, because I'm at a point where I need more policy feedback from the board, is what type of memorial would we be looking at? The project location, where would we be looking at the project location? What kind of scope and budget would we be looking at? What's comfortable for you guys? Funding sources, would it be something where the township would fund the whole project? Would we fund a portion of the project? Try to get matching funds from local businesses, nonprofits, and also a timeline. So I'm not looking for any definitive decisions tonight, but just to try to raise the issue for you guys so you can, I'd like to try to get this ball moving forward, but we need some feedback from you guys. It's been discussed, maybe getting a representative from the VFW, maybe some other veterans who would like to work with the township on this. I'm all open for ideas, so.
Any other comments from anybody else? I mean, my thoughts initially are it would be great to have it here on this campus and maybe have some kind of competition with maybe, the students at the Western Tech or maybe wider, I don't know. It might be possible to design something that's fairly involved, but then do it in steps, something small enough that the Eagle Scout himself could do a manageable piece of it, and then there's still a bigger design later. And then maybe funding, we could do the, outsourcing online. Just some thoughts. Okay, moving on from that, solicitor's report.
I think we're at consultants report, I believe.
My apologies, consultant reports.
If there's anything from Bill or Casey. I don't think we have any. Now we're at solicitors.
Okay. There's two items that are on here. The first one is the draft procedural rules. You've been operating since you organized without using any procedural rules. The one that most people know about is Robert's Rules of Procedure, which really is made for much larger bodies like the United States Congress. What I circulated to you is a very stripped-down set of rules that was prepared by the University of North Carolina Institute for Small Local Governments, which I have modified and used elsewhere with success. It really only has the most basic parts of the unwieldy Roberts rules. And since there's nobody here who's an official parliamentarian, it's tough to administer Roberts, but it's not hard to administer these rules, which are only a few pages. I don't know if you've had time to go through the actual rules, it's not an emergency or anything, but if you want to, we just circulated them. I'm explaining it now, and then maybe have comments back by the next meeting. It's fine.
Yeah, where did they come from? These,
From the template comes from a part of the University of North Carolina called the Institute for Small Local Governments.
all right, yeah, I see a number of issues here that, Just looking at this for a couple minutes, for the public to address the board, there's no provision for, like, we just had a 3-minute, in the beginning of our meetings, we have a 3-minute session for the citizens to come and speak to the board without having being placed on the agenda, other things like that. There's a number of things here that I see that we need to work on.
Some of those are things that are in the new administrative chapter of your ordinances. This is meant to focus, there is some of that in here, and it doesn't have to stay in. This is meant to focus on your interactions with each other as you deliberate and vote more than it is on the other part of it. But any comments you have, shoot me an email and we'll get it in line. The other one is the still pending pay-to-play ordinance. My partner, Eric, covered the meeting at which this was initially discussed. This was something that the board asked us to prepare some time ago, and we've been sort of kicking it around for a couple of months, I guess you'd say. And then the last meeting was the first time that it was really hashed through by the board at a public meeting. I circulated an email to you all on February 26th, where I said that from what Eric had told me, there were 3 main concerns about it as it was drafted. Did anybody have any additional concerns to the ones that I summarized in that email?
Yeah, actually, I just have to wonder, I would just like to know what the purpose of this ordinance is, maybe from other board members. Because we're not a large county where we're issuing contracts and whatnot, and of course, we're all for running our government efficiently and without undue influence from outside people, but this affects 3 consultants, our attorney, our traffic engineer, and our township engineer. I just don't know if maybe one of the other board members can tell me what is the purpose of this proposed ordinance, because I'm just having difficulty, because the more we talk about it, the bigger it gets, the deeper it gets, the more convoluted it gets. Over 3 of our professional providers that we've had for years who do a great job for us. So I'm just trying to understand, maybe other board members can say why are we pursuing this issue right now?
You know, it is true, Al. When I first brought the ordinance to the board and to Joe, it was simple. It was just, our consultants can't give any running supervisor that's campaigning more than $250. It was just to be fair. It was just so that it wasn't paying you to then play once you get elected. That was really as simple as it was. It is true. It has gotten bigger and deeper, and there's more questions, and so I'm seeing that as we go along. As Joe has mentioned, it's been now months, because every time it comes back up, there's more questions. And so, I mean, I don't know. I'm open to what everybody else thinks also. I brought it up just because I thought it would be good to have an ordinance so there's no paying to play.
Yeah, nobody wants to be against this, and I'm not saying I'm against this, but that's why we have election rules and finance rules, and the filing of your financial disclosures with the county, with your campaign, and how you raised money. And if there's a red flag that ABC Consultant gave a campaign $5,000, we should know that. But at the same time, we should know it, but
We don't always know.
we don't always know, because A, people can fudge their financial stuff. B, they could not file their financial disclosure, or C, we could just miss it. But we can miss it with this ordinance too.
Right.
So, having run for office, do consultants, and you've all done it, this goes on both sides of the fence, right? We have fundraisers, and the public knows that we have fundraisers. People come to the fundraisers, contribute reasonable numbers, and the more you provide to candidates, the more you have to disclose who you are. We've taken $10 contributions, because it costs a lot of money to sit up here and have the benefit of sitting here and looking at the public. But But there's also other things, like look at in the news, IBEW gave tens of thousands of dollars to local candidates here. That's not even on it. And by the way, I'm the only union member on this board. I would never get a union contribution because I'm not on the right party. But the thing is, money flows, and again, there's not flagrant. I never received a $5,000 donation. You know, they're small. They're the 250s, which doesn't even really cover this ordinance doesn't even cover that. So we're paying our attorney a lot of money to review this, and it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and I just don't know why we're doing it. It affects 3 people sitting in this audience, and all 3 of them do a great job. They've been here for years. So that's all.
The one concern that I have in concept, I have no problem with it. I think it's a good idea. I think it ties in with trying to be transparent, and I'm not someone who has any interest in paying to play. I'm sure the other guys would say the same thing. We want you to be wanted for doing a good job. The problem that I have really is with enforcement of it. If somebody breaks a criminal law, that already is on, whatever law they break is already on the books, and they can be referred to prosecution now without an ordinance. But that's really the strongest thing that we could come up with to put in here, because short of that, you're going to have to convene some sort of hearing here, like amongst yourselves, or try to quasi-criminalize it and send it to the local magisterial district judge, who's going to throw their arms up and say, oh my gosh, this is the first one of these I've ever seen. What am I supposed to do? So from an enforcement standpoint, I think it's difficult. I agree with some of what Al said, but I always want to do what you guys want me to do, so I was tasked with it. And this is really the best. This looks very much like a combination of some of the ones from New Jersey, Scranton, Wilkes-Barre, I think, had them, and then, of course, Allentown, which was racked with a pay-to-play scandal and trial, and so they, of course, had one. Most of the ones you see are in New Jersey, because in New Jersey, they have to adopt one to get state funding for certain type of state funding. So if you look online, you'll find tons of them in New Jersey, very few in PA. I think I only found 5. But I'm certainly, whatever a majority of the board wants to do.
Well, question, the 5 that are in Pennsylvania, they must have run into the same hurdles that we are. The further you go down, the harder it is to enforce, and those kinds of same, what Al brought up, what we agreed. How do they handle that?
I don't know.
What's the answer for them?
From what I recall, only one of those towns, and it might have been Allentown, actually had encountered the problem after they adopted the ordinance, and it had to do with the vendor of the security system for the courthouse or something, and that they were ignoring it. I don't even know if it's gone to a hearing yet, and the others, I don't know if they've ever enforced it. I've never spoken to anybody at any of those. I could certainly try to
No, I
speak
don't
to
want
someone.
to, again, to Al's point, and I agree to some extent, I don't want to have.
It's also important to remember that if you're not comfortable with the way in which any of your consultants have conducted themselves, a majority of you can just tell us to hit the bricks. We don't have a contract. You're not canceling a contract. You can let me go any day of the week, or the engineers too.
Is that all right, Bill?
Did I say that too clearly for the others?
We have changed consultants over the years, and not because of not contributing maybe to a political party or anything like that, only because of service, lack of service, or we just decided to put out RFPs. I think that's, we did it with McMahon. We put out an RFP, interviewed several different firms, and that's how we decided. I mean, if we go with the RFP, you kind of this goes away because we're going by an RFP, not just because they contributed to somebody's campaign fund. We want the best consultants that we have, so.
Or you can make our lives easier and make it $0, and then get every municipality to adopt it, and then we're in pretty good shape.
Do you guys want to, just drop it and table it? And not table it, I mean, just drop it entirely.
Or we could just take no action and discuss it at another time. If we want. Right?
Yes.
Okay, under supervisors' comments, there's a few announcements. Upcoming public hearings scheduled for April 1st. There are 3. Public hearing by the Traffic Impact Fee Advisory Committee to consider the Act 209 Capital Improvement Plan. That's at 6 o'clock. And there's a public hearing by the Board of Supervisors to consider a request from Pulte Homes to rezone the properties at 1701 to 1709 Ridge Pike from NC, Neighborhood Commercial, to R3, that's at 7. And also a public hearing by us, the Board of Supervisors, to consider a conditional use application requesting a flexible lotting option for the property at 395 Greenwood Avenue. That's also at 7 o'clock. So that's 3 hearings on April 1st.
That's a lot of hearings.
It's a lot of hearings.
It's going to be a long night. Is that, are we sticking too much in one night?
I don't think the hearings in themselves will be too much. The first is by the Traffic Impact Fee Advisory Committee at 6 o'clock. I plan to put very little else on the agenda. I mean, only, something that arises in emergency that requires immediate action. Otherwise, we'll keep the agenda as light as we can.
Any other supervisors' comments from anybody else?
Yeah, I have a couple things. Ms. Mossy came up earlier in the meeting, and she talked about the meetings that are taking place on Tuesdays at 3 o'clock. I did the math, and I think she said 24 meetings. It's actually 36 additional meetings. My concern with the meetings, and I've thought about this for a while, I can't get to them. I can get to a lot of things in this town. I do quite a bit, as you all know. I just can't get to those meetings. I haven't been to one. Problem with it is it's at the daytime meeting. It's not open government because there are few, if any, attendees. We don't have an agenda. We don't have meeting minutes that are distributed to the public. It's no different than having a meeting, letting this meeting go on to midnight. That's not open government, having a meeting at midnight. That wouldn't be right, especially if we were broadcasting live or having people here in the audience. The board members are deliberating. Decisions aren't, my understanding is no votes, but still decisions are being made. And we've seen, and I have examples of that. One example is the park concert. The gentleman we've given $5,000 to for a concert. That was all discussed at a Tuesday meeting. It was never here before the board. I was clueless to what was taking place, what the purpose of that concert was, and I had to go through an entire this meeting to understand it. My point is, I don't think we should be having those meetings. It's not open government in my eyes. Besides that, by having these meetings, are inundating our manager with time. We are consuming his time, and the assistant manager's time, and the staff's time. Instead of running the community like they should every day, they're spending hours appeasing board members to attend the meetings, to prepare for the meetings, to report on the meetings, when this is the meeting that we should be having. At any time, if I wanted to call Mr. Tieperman, I can talk to Brian about some issues. We can do that. He can communicate with us with some pending issues, but to have a meeting, a public meeting that's not attended by the public at a time that is difficult for the public to attend, and adding 36 of those meetings a year, I don't think that's not open government.
Well, let's talk about it openly. I'm not opposed. Ever since I've been on this board and got elected, that's what we've been doing.
I never did that.
Well, Mondays, you came many to Monday morning.
We came, but that was
We participated, and the only reason why we changed is because Phil could never attend, but you and I, and there was only ever 2 of us that went because we did the Sunshine Law, but you and I regularly.
Correct.
I went probably as much as you did.
Right, we went, but it's, the first 2 years I was on the board, we never had a meeting like that. I was very much engaged, and the reason I attended the meetings is because I wanted to attend those meetings because a lot of things were being talked about. I didn't want to be out of the loop, but now we're having a public meeting, and we can deliberate. We couldn't really make decisions at those meetings when they were informal, but now it's a formal meeting. Now it's a real meeting, and we're saying it's public, but we're not treating it like it's public, because we don't have an agenda, we're not reporting on the minutes.
So
That's-
let me just ask, when, prior to these Tuesday meetings, we had Monday meetings, but there was only ever two. And is that the difference, is that now could be more than two of us, and it's open to the public that makes this unsettling, or any meetings, even with two of us, isn't a good idea? I just want to be clear as to
For me,
where the
to have the,
discrepancy is.
even the two-person meetings where there was deliberation and there was discussions going on now, it wasn't a majority. But it's not, again, having the meetings like that, what you do is you alienate some supervisors, you're alienating the public. This should be the way to do the discussions. We are debating things here, and we're learning about things for the first time. We're all learning about things for the first time, instead of just you two, a brief Al, brief John, or brief Phil on something that they couldn't make it. But we're all here on a Monday night. We
Yeah,
can all be brief.
And I just want to get to the gist of why we even started. I mean, since the very beginning, that's what we did.
No,
So-
that's what you did. It's not what I did.
Well, right,
I've been
and
on
I-
4
and
years. This is
so-
my fourth year. Fourth year. For the first 2 years, I never did that.
And I wonder too, is it because we went to 5, was it a way to kind of keeping us moving along in the right direction? I think that might have been what it was hard to get 5 people, it was like corralling cats, so I think keeping at least 2 people moving along, that's always what we did, so it's interesting to hear.
I'll chime in a little bit on the Monday meetings. The purpose of the Monday meetings, we went from a 3-member to a 5-member Board of Supervisors. You got 3 new people, and it was an opportunity to try to just keep you guys briefed on issues without violating sunshine law. And I think Brian and I came up with a Monday meeting would be a good idea to try to help you along. But then we also were concerned that we didn't want to run afoul of sunshine law. I think Brian put in an ad advertising these meetings, so in case we slipped into deliberation, which I think we try very carefully not to, so that we're legal in case we do slip in. I think we want to be clean. It was intended to be clean in front of the law, and it wasn't certainly any intent to run afoul with sunshine. Does that make sense?
From
been to
my
most of these.
Go ahead, Joe.
I've been to most of these meetings. Never once has there been any deliberation. I'm not in favor of the meetings. I never have been from the very onset of these things, but I attended them. There have been, on most of the occasions that we've had these meetings on the Tuesday afternoons, there have been at least one individual, one citizen there. You can ask that gentleman whether there was any deliberation going on that day, on any of those days. I have no problem not having these things. It's certainly okay with me.
If I could add also, it was an attempt to compromise on what happened. I know my predecessor regularly had what they were called 3 o'clock afternoon staff meetings, where I think where there was deliberation and there were votes. And I think we made an effort in going forward that we would not do that. So I think we were trying to find a compromise.
Yeah, and
I
I'm
would,
not,
just
John, I'm not.
excuse me a
oh,
second.
go
There
ahead, Phil.
were no votes taken at those meetings. They were Wednesday morning meetings at 9 o'clock, and there were never any votes taken. I can tell you that because I attended, and that's when I stopped attending. I have not attended Monday meetings. I've attended one Wednesday, Tuesday meeting, okay? But I attended the Tuesday meeting. I did attend one Monday meeting, but I was the only one there.
I'm talking about the ones George Waterman
I'm
did.
talking about those.
Yeah.
There was no votes taken there. Okay, there was discussion, and minutes were kept, and they were distributed to the supervisors.
I wasn't
So
here.
there was other meetings throughout this history, if Phil
They
was
stopped,
mentioning.
they stopped 5-6 years ago.
Because, like, they had them for a reason.
Well, because when Tim came on board, it was decided that we would stop them, and we didn't have those anymore. But going back to these, whether they're Monday meetings, whether they're Tuesday meetings, whatever they are, whether there's deliberations going on or not, decisions are being made and giving our staff direction to move forward on different projects, I'll say, that the entire board wasn't aware of. We know that's happened, okay, because something happened and they were given direction to move in that direction. Because we're moving backwards now with some of the same things. So I'm fine with just eliminating the meetings, and maybe Tim's best served by communicating to us through email, this is what we're doing, and not soliciting comments back, as long as that's acceptable to, we're not going to do a vote over the internet or through Facebook or anything like that. Just communicating to us what's going on so that when we come to a meeting, we have it and we can talk about it. I find it difficult sometimes on a Friday night to sit down and digest all this stuff before a Monday night meeting. I don't know about you, but you try to drive out and look at the subdivisions, see where they are, drive out to Hafner Road and see where this is. So I understand what we're talking about. We come in here, I'm not acting blindly. But when I get meeting minutes on a Friday night, I find it difficult to be adequately prepared for a Monday night meeting.
So what's our suggestion to staff? I just want to be clear about what we're telling them. We want our packet before the Monday night meeting prior to Friday.
I would like it on a Wednesday. It was delivered to my house. Excuse me, delivered to my house before on a Wednesday.
Well, I think the first thing at hand here is, and we're all sitting here right now, and we can do it by a show of hands or a vote or however you would like to discontinue the meetings at the Tuesday afternoon, the Monday morning, or whatever other meeting that's been advertised. And I've already said this, that I don't have any problem with not having these meetings. As far as I'm concerned, we don't need the meetings. I've said that from day one. And, you want to take a show of hands, all those in favor that don't want to have the meeting, you want to raise your hand?
I would like to have a conversation a little bit farther into what's going to take the place of them. If you also don't like.
We're not going to take.
Wait.
Yeah,
Let me finish. If there's not going to be even the two people at a Monday morning meeting, whatever day and time we have it, if you guys don't even want that, and we're still trying to get around sunshine law, then my understanding is you can't even send out a group email to everybody on what the issues are that are coming up. Please clarify to me what the options are.
It's fine for Tim to send out an email advising you of what's going to be on the agenda or what's going on. It's the deliberations among you that can't happen, even in response to that email. So it's a one-way directive from someone who's not one of you.
If I could, Laura, you're the chairperson, right? So you could set a weekly meeting with Tim and go over things, whether you want to or not. Somebody's got to turn something off. So you can have your meeting, and then Tim could provide an update for us with the things. He used to do the update. He would send along. He would spend plenty of time doing that, and that was a time suck for him, but it was one time. Now, so he can report issues to us, and then, we can each speak to Tim, as long as we don't consume. That's the problem of being a supervisor. Some supervisors, all of us included, can sometimes make a call and it's an hour phone call, and that buries them. He's not going to say it to you, hey Al, you're killing me with the phone calls, right? But this happens. So we have to be cognizant of the staff's time. He can report to us the important issues as best he can with an email. And John, you make a comment about not deliberating. It was a public meeting. So you could have. You didn't say anything. It wasn't an attack on you about the Tuesday meetings. We never deliberated. You had a quorum, so you naturally could talk about the things on the Tuesday meetings.
You could talk about it, but
Sure.
no deliberation ever took place. Let me just make this real simple, okay? For everybody who does not want to have these meetings, raise your hand. I'm happy to not have this meeting. It'll make it real simple.
Lord.
I do not want to have the meetings.
Can
Okay,
we,
guys?
let's do a motion, not
Then
just
make
to
a
raise your
motion, then. I
hand.
don't care how you handle it, Madam Chairman. It's like, however you want to deal with this.
Or you can just discontinue them. Just continue.
One suggestion, and Joe, I would ask you to weigh in. I know in some towns that I've worked in, I know some of your client towns, the board members meet maybe an hour or a little bit before the regular meeting to discuss on the agenda. Sometimes those are considered pre-meeting workshops. I don't know if that might be a,
They're a possible option. They do invite the possibility of sliding into deliberations. You know, if I'm there for it, I can throw a red flag. But they create at least the possibility of sliding into conversations, but you can do it.
usually everybody's here, and if there's any pressing issues, if there's a last-minute issue on a waiver or something, you can bring it up at the last minute. I'm just trying to think of a compromise where everybody's informed.
I just want to say that we try really, really hard not to go into deliberations for these meetings. They've also all been advertised, and yes, it's a difficult time for people who work to get to them. But also, Tim tries to give an update to everybody afterwards as soon as possible so that people do know what's going on. And you get the packet on Friday. Yes, it would be better if it were on Wednesday, but you get the packet on Friday and you find out about that information, and therefore you can call Tim on Friday or over the weekend or Mondays to get more information. So for me to say you walk into a meeting and say you didn't know anything about it is, to me, disingenuous. I see a hand up. If someone would like to come up and make a comment.
Madam Chairman, with all due respect, it's not about whether you guys are informed, it's about whether we, the public, are informed. And that's what's not happening here. That is what's not happening here. There are deliberations taking place, and I don't care what you call them. You could call them talking about something, or you can call it deliberations. But if you're talking about something, you're deliberating it. And it's happening outside of the public eye. If you put an agenda out at the beginning of the week and said, okay, on our Tuesday meeting, we're going to be talking about X, Y, and Z, if it was something that was important to me, maybe I'd want to be here for that. But I don't know what you guys are going to be talking about. And that's the problem. It's not about informing you guys. It's about informing the public and being transparent and having an open government. And that's why I came up and said something today, because I think it's outrageous that you guys are doing this.
Thank you. Any further comments? And what do you guys want to do?
Tim, what are you comfortable
I'm
with?
sorry, did you want to say something, sir? Did you want to come up and make a comment?
My name's John Kraft. I'm down at 159 Woodland Avenue, and I really don't know anything of the background on this, so this is my first time hearing about it. Just wondered if there were meetings going, you said they didn't advertise, why aren't they on the township website when they list the Board of Supervisors meetings? There's nothing out there that says they're meeting any other time except first and third Mondays, so that kind of confuses me.
Where are they advertised, Joe? Or are they advertised?
Well, I don't know a lot about the advertising of these meetings. I don't attend these meetings. They're not a part of my world. But I can tell you this much: the legal advertisement that's required for meetings is not the website. The website's additional. I don't know why it's not on there, but if Brian says he advertised them, legally, I have to assume that he did.
It's a little blurb in the Pottstown Mercury about this big with the Union Mag, but that's how it's done.
Someday the law will catch up and allow those to be the legal ad, but there's a very strong newspaper lobby that makes sure that those ads keep getting run in newspapers, at least for the current time period.
Helene, I don't want to dodge your question. My goal is to make sure you guys are adequately informed, and I think we've tried every trick in the book to make sure everybody gets information equally. I'm willing to explore new ideas, and one of the suggestions I had is if we could all congregate maybe before the regular meeting. If there's any hint, sometimes you have outstanding questions like we did tonight on a particular subdivision that we could try to flesh out. And Lori, you're chairman, I think maybe what we could, if you want, we can meet on a regular basis, and between you and me, we can get information out. I want to be legal, ethical, transparent, all of the above.
Okay, somebody wanted to just have a raise of hands, or do you want to actually do a formal motion regarding these meetings?
We advertise them, right? So we need to, do we have to, Mr. Solicitor, do we have to take action since we already advertised it? We need to,
You can put notice on the meeting room that they're canceled.
Okay. So do we even need to even make a motion?
Well, it was done administratively in the first instance. It was never done by a motion, so you don't have to undo it by a motion.
Okay.
Do you want to do a show of hands on who wants?
I mean, just doing it, if you're doing a show of hands, that's a motion, so it doesn't harm
okay.
anything to be clear, so that, where everybody is on it.
I'll make a motion to end the Tuesday afternoon, 3 o'clock public meetings that have been previously advertised.
I'll second it.
I have a motion and a second to eliminate the Tuesday 3 o'clock meetings. With a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
So be it.
Motion carries.
Tim had suggested getting here earlier in front of the scheduled meetings. Is that being?
Could we advertise a 6 o'clock or 6:30 pre-meeting work? I mean, I don't know, I want to be legal with sunshine. That caucus room, when we built it, was meant to have public, if we wanted public to come in to, if we have to. I mean,
Yeah.
that's up.
I think we invite, I think we get into the same problem. This is
The
where we
point, the
deliberate.
point is, you're all here before the meeting.
Right,
so-
and we're all here, and when we got there this evening, there was a question about the development case that we spoke about. There was questions, I was answering some questions to help us understand.
And I think that's helpful.
That was helpful, but that was the purpose of that, and that wasn't deliberation, that was information gathering that was provided to us. For us to say, come early, that's just a meeting.
I'm just trying to come up with maybe an acceptable alternative for it.
Yeah,
So,
that's not the answer,
Okay.
in my opinion.
So it seems to me that you're going to just one-on-one with Laurie and,
We'll work it out.
yeah.
He's been doing this for many years, so he's done it.
Okay, further supervisor comments, I wanted to recommend a couple more books, surprising as that may seem, unless there are other supervisors who would like to comment about other things before I continue.
I'm good.
One of the books I'd like to recommend, this is, again, if anybody else has books that they would like to recommend that people read because they've enjoyed it or got a lot out of it or whatever, please, drop a line to the office, the township, Tim, me, just because I think it's a great idea to keep reading and reading books and expanding our horizons. And one of the ones I'd like to recommend is Educated by Tara Westover. It's a memoir of her growing up on the side of a mountain in Idaho. And the other is Black Beauty. I know a lot of people think that Black Beauty is a children's book. It is not. It was never written as a children's book. I urge you really go back and read it again as an adult and see what you get out of it. Moving on, unless there are any other comments or topics that people want to talk about, I am going to entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you all for coming tonight. I really appreciate all the faces who come in.